Welcome to this Sunday morning meditation class offered by the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, IMCW, and IMCW's Center for Mindful Living, which is a kind of community within the larger IMCW community. And many folks have joined, particularly since the beginning of the pandemic, joined online. And often many of you are from places outside of the Washington area. We used to just be, kind of based in, we're still based in Washington, but, almost everything was in person. But now it's very much mixed, and in fact, many things online. And so it's wonderful to have people from so many different places joining us. And so, Chelsea joining from Mount Rainier in Maryland. Yes. Found Hugh's meditations on Insight Timer. Happy to be here. Wonderful. Great to have you here, Chelsea. And Valerie joining from York, Pennsylvania. And yes, I've actually been on Insight Timer already today. Did a live session at 9. So kind of set things up for our session today. So I'm Hugh Byrne and teach with IMCW, have done for over 20 years, and with the Center for Mindful Living, which we started back, I think, in about 2011 or so. And we've actually had a Sunday morning meditation going back to 2000. So we started off in a friend's therapy office in Woodley Park in DC, and then gravitated to other parts of DC, to mainly the Tenleytown area. And now we're in the terms of the class, it's online, although we're going to be doing some more sessions in person. Probably will be hybrid as well, where we'll be in person, but we'll also have the online piece. So anyway, with all of that, a very warm welcome to all of you. I hope your weekend is going well. Hope you had a good week, and hope you're staying warm. Many places are pretty cold, and we do have some warm weather coming up in most of the country, and certainly around the East Coast, and so later in the week. So very good to be together again. What I'm going to be the theme of today, I'm just calling meeting life with beauty and courage. And I want to talk today about freedom, spiritual freedom, inner freedom, freedom of the heart. And the term, the name is from Rilke's, a quote from Rilke that I'll probably mention today, but the dragons that turn into princesses, once you meet them with, acceptance, and once you meet them with beauty and courage. So kind of want to explore freedom, inner freedom, and how we can cultivate it, and what difference it makes in our lives. We're all here probably because we are interested in perhaps working with difficulties or challenges or suffering. Many of us come to these practices to gain more calm, more peace, perhaps more freedom, less stress, less worry, or better tools to be able to deal with these kind of more difficult and challenging qualities. So I want to kind of talk broadly about the theme of freedom, inner freedom, freedom of the heart today. And the format of the session, we begin with a meditation, which is normally about 20 minutes. Then we have a talk, which is around normally 30 minutes or so. And then Emily leads us in some mindful movement, which is a very, important part of our practice, is to be embodied and to be grounded in these what the Buddha called this fathom long body. And then we have some time normally for some sharing or some questions. And we finish at 12. And typically we take a little time afterwards. People can stay around and have some informal sharing afterwards, maybe for half an hour, from 12 to 12:30. But we finish at 12. So it's a little bit about the format of the class. And so we'll begin with a meditation, and invite you to find a posture that's comfortable and relaxed. Mostly be sitting down, but could be reclining. And, we can meditate standing up. We can do walking meditation. Most of us today be sitting. So finding a comfortable, relaxed posture. So sitting in a way that allows your spine to be straight and invite your shoulders to relax. You can let your hands rest wherever they're comfortable, in the lap or on your knees or on your thighs. You could close your eyes, let your attention come inward, or keep your eyes open. It's helpful if it's just a soft, unfocused gaze. And it can be helpful to take a few longer, deeper breaths to help us settle and arrive. You might just take a nice, full, deep in-breath, filling the chest, filling the lungs. Just hold a moment and then release, just letting go, a long, slow out-breath. So as you breathe in and out, just be aware of the breath, be aware of the feelings. Feeling of expansion, feeling of release as you breathe out. Breathing in, calming the body. Breathing out, calming the mind. Letting your breathing help you settle into being here, being present right now, with whatever is here in the body and in the heart, in the mind. If you can make space for whatever's present. Then you might consciously invite a smile or a half smile to your face. Enough to activate the muscles around your eyes and around your mouth. If it's helpful, you might think of somebody who you love, somebody you care about, somebody who makes you feel happy, a loved one, good friend, a pet. And allow yourself to take in whatever feelings come up. The smile helps us relax and settle, calming the body and the mind. Just let your awareness come to the body. Just notice whatever feelings are present right now, whatever sensations are here. Just bring awareness to anything that's predominant, anything that stands out. Maybe there's a little tension somewhere. Just bring awareness to that area. Let the feelings come and go. Feel the sensations of your breathing in your body, at the nostrils, the chest, the belly, expanding, falling. Feel the sensations of contact with the chair or the cushion, or your hands with your knees or your lap. Just opening to whatever is present for you right now, making space for it. You might bring awareness to just generally how you're feeling, your mood, your emotions right now. Now, whatever's here. There might be a feeling of restlessness or tiredness. There might be a feeling of calm or effervescence or joy. Just notice, just in a kind and non-judging way, whatever is here for you. See if you can just allow whatever is here to be here. It's not wanting to control or change anything, but meeting what's here with acceptance, with kindness. Just letting everything come and go in its own time. Not feeling the need to hold on to anything or push anything away. Just this moment, this experience as it is. It's this changing flow of experience. Your breath coming and going in its own time. Sounds coming and going. Sensations coming, staying for a while, and then if we just meet them with friendliness, just letting them go when they're ready to go. times thoughts come to the mind from somewhere, memories, images, just letting them, being aware of and letting them come and go, and not following them wherever they go. You might envision your mind as like an open sky. It's awareness and different things coming along, being present for a while, just being known in awareness. The sounds coming and going, feelings. You can think of them as like clouds passing through the sky, or birds flying through the sky. The sky is still there, open, spacious, and different phenomena come for a while and pass. If you find yourself pulled into a particular experience, maybe you think about something and an emotion arises, you kind of get pulled into that. Just whenever you notice, you might just come back to that open awareness. It's the mind like the sky. And just feel how it is to just rest in that awareness, where everything just can come and go, can pass like clouds or like birds through the sky. And if any time, if you feel it more helpful to have a more grounded focus like your breathing, you can always just go bring awareness to your breathing as an anchor. But if there's some kind of relative steadiness, it can be helpful just to open to this spacious awareness. So if you get pulled into anything, maybe find yourself caught up in a story in the mind, a thought comes up and you follow it, and you're maybe thinking about the past or the future, something that's happened. You can just, when you become aware, just step back into the open awareness. See this as just another movement, a movement of the mind. You find if you have maybe an unpleasant bodily feeling and you find yourself tightening up, just notice that and just see if you can allow the body to relax and open. Seeing everything, it's just coming and going in this open space of awareness. Everything coming and going. Nothing that needs to be pushed away or resisted. Nothing to hold on to. Nothing to judge. And if there is pushing away or holding on or judgment, just see those too as other movements of the mind that can be met with acceptance, letting them come and go. This is from Li Po. The birds have vanished into the sky, and now the last cloud drains away. We sit together, the mountain and me, until only the mountain remains. We sit together, the mountain and me, until only the mountain remains. Just meeting whatever is present with acceptance and with kindness. Just appreciate maybe the time, the space to go inward. To be present with whatever we're experiencing. Blaise Pascal said, all of humanity's misfortunes come from man's or our inability to sit quietly in a room alone. All of our suffering, all of our collective misfortunes come from our inability to sit quietly in a room alone. So just appreciating this sitting quietly in a room alone with everyone else who's here, practicing together. So again, welcome everyone. Welcome all those who've joined us. And might be helpful just to notice what's present for you right now. Just taking the time to go inward. And I want to talk today about freedom. The title that came up for me was Meeting Life with Beauty and Courage, which comes from one of Rilke's, poet Rilke's letters to a young poet, series of letters he wrote. And this was perhaps one of the most famous ones. And I was inspired to kind of look at this, kind of explore this freedom, inner freedom, spiritual freedom. After I got a message, it was actually on Insight Timer from somebody who had come to live sessions and listened to things of mine on there. And she asked about freedom, and she spoke about seeking refuge in these teachings and in these practices to help address life's challenges. And the most important challenge for her was as a mother who had a son who was suffering from mental health issues, drug abuse, and was presently, I think, is incarcerated. Now, so, as we know, and maybe some have experienced some of that, but we can all kind of sense how incredibly painful that must be for a parent or any parent in that situation. And she said on the other side, she saw a young man, and these are her words, brimming with curiosity, kindness, and joy. And she said that as a mother, she wanted to do everything she could to help him. And again, her words, hopefully plant a seed of mindfulness in his travels. And so she went on to ask if I would sometime be interested in discussing freedom and how, no matter our situation, and these are her words again, imprisoned within or outside ourselves, how freedom can be cultivated. she said that a talk on freedom would be welcomed by many, including many parents with incarcerated children who live in the shadows. And she finished by saying that as a person with a loved one who's incarcerated, the only way so far to help them, she said, is to learn to free myself from the grief, the guilt, and the shame. She said, only then can I be like the sky for my son, open and expansive, allowing everything to come and go as it is. So I thought there was a very beautiful way of sharing it, that her understanding that the best thing she could do perhaps for her son was to really work with and transform her own reactions, her own pain, so that she could be fully herself and be fully open to his suffering and the suffering of others. And kind of that really spoke to me and speaks to me really about, these practices, the teachings of the Dharma, and you can talk about the Dharma as the Buddha's Dharma, the teachings of and practices of the Buddha, but you can think of the Dharma as the truth, the way life is. We can think of the Dharma, the broader Dharma, as, the wisdom coming from many, many different traditions and practices. The Dharma of Rumi and Rilke and, so many others, that of Nelson Mandela and Dr. King and Rosa Parks and so many others, what they can teach us and have taught us, do teach us about transforming our hearts as well as transforming our world. So I was moved by this message, both by her suffering that was clearly expressed, and also for her compassion and insight into how she might be able to best support her son. And so kind of it inspired me to reflect on and talk today about freedom, what it means, and if it's possible in this life to be free. And as we begin this, this talk and this reflection, I invite you to think about, just for a minute, about what freedom means to you. Particularly focused on freedom of the heart, inner freedom. And what does it mean to you? Is it something that is meaningful? Are you practicing for some greater space or ease or freedom in your life, a freedom from entanglements? Do you feel that it's possible to really transform your life through these practices? I mean, in some ways, there's an assumption that if we come to these kind of classes and sessions, that there's some way we're invested in thinking, well, this could make a difference for me, it could make a difference in my life. But, it may be very different for different people. So just that invitation to reflect on it. And you might reflect on, the Buddha's teachings that each one of us really has the capacity for the deepest freedom, for a complete letting go of all of the afflictive states that we get caught up in. Anyone experience those? Getting angry, getting annoyed, pissed off, being stressed out. It happened to me once. No. I think we all know this, and I want to kind of reflect on this in the talk, but just kind of thinking about it in your own life. So maybe just to begin, in its broad sense, everyday sense, we can understand freedom as, and if this has a lot of relationship to this kind of spiritual freedom I'm going to be talking about, but freedom in its broader sense, political, social, etc., we might understand to be the power or the right to act and speak and change as we want to do, as we wish, without hindrance, without restraint. So we think of it often as like the absence of constraints, such as being enslaved, for example, or being imprisoned, or being prevented from speaking or associating or practicing one's religion or beliefs, etc. We think of those kind of freedoms, freedom to, if I want to practice this religion, if I want to meet together with people, if I want to try and change things, I have the right to do this kind of the freedom we understand in this way. These are of great importance in our lives. Obviously, economic freedom is really important, to have the wherewithal to be able to even experience, the other kinds of freedom. We're living in abject poverty. Our choices are very, very limited. And so, we can think of these really constraints on our ability to do what we want to do, what we would wish to do, what we care about doing. And these freedoms are incredibly important. We understand, I think hopefully all of us understand the importance of political freedom when, much of the world lives under autocracies, authoritarian societies. And, I have, when I teach, in the Insight Timer, many people are joining from, countries like Argentina and Chile and Peru and Brazil and other places around the world, occasionally from Russia, China, where there isn't political freedom, and hasn't been in the past. In some there are now in Latin America much more, but where people live under dictatorships, and how constraining that is, and on people's lives, and how important democracy is, and we kind of hopefully reflecting on that in terms of our own political processes here. But that's obviously not what I'm going to be focusing on today, but just having that as a kind of, a framework, a broader sense of freedom. But I want to talk about spiritual freedom, the inner freedom, what you might call freedom of the heart, which is certainly not separated from those broader freedoms. And I'll talk about ways in which I think they're really very closely connected, that transforming our own hearts has a very real impact on, potentially on social and political freedom, those who have brought about change in the world. You think about, the civil rights movement and the practices, of nonviolence particularly, and the inner practices that serve to help bring about, broader change. So there's obviously an important relationship, but I want to focus on spiritual freedom, inner freedom, which we might think about as really a fundamental freedom. I shared Blaise Pascal's famous saying, that all of humanity's misfortunes come from our inability to sit quietly in a room alone. It's a powerful reflection I find from the 17th century. The understanding that if we are not able to deal with our own inner demons, our own struggles, our own painful emotions and mind states, what we will not just typically, almost inevitably do is we'll act them out in the world. We'll blame other people for the feelings, they'll come out as anger or greed or as hatred or as, some forms of confusion and unconsciousness that we'll bring into the world. And it will almost always bring suffering, so this inner freedom of the heart, you think of as really, really fundamental, really foundational. It's what Viktor Frankl spoke of as the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way. And as you know, he was talking of the experience of living through the Auschwitz death camp under Nazi Germany, or under the Nazis in World War II. And, he spoke about how people's even survival and one's ability to work with one's inner life really was reflected in how people dealt with even that extraordinary painful reality of being in a concentration camp. He spoke about those people who would give away their last piece of bread, go from hut to hut, giving their last piece of bread. He said everything could be taken from them, from us, but the last of the human freedoms, the freedom to choose our own response. So that freedom he's pointing to is really the same way the Buddha is pointing to the inner transformation that's possible, that allows us helps us to free ourselves and to live, to experience freedom in whatever our situation may be. So it's not dependent on external conditions. It's not dependent on even whether we're imprisoned. And I often think about Nelson Mandela, who was imprisoned for 27 years under the apartheid regime in South Africa, 21 years, I think, on Robben Island, and how he was able to transform himself, and come to a level of acceptance and equanimity, acceptance of his condition, not saying in any way that it was right or just, but just acknowledging this was the truth. And from that place, being able to transform his own heart. And I think it comes across very clearly that he actually did practice meditation. There's a lovely letter from him to his then wife, Winnie Mandela, and I think in the early 80s, of encouraging her to meditate, take 15 minutes a day to kind of do this inner work, and he practiced meditation. And I'm not trying to make more of that, but that was an important part of his inner work. And I think it's a very clear example of the way that transforming one's own heart can actually, he was able to see the humanity in those that were causing such suffering, the leaders of the apartheid regime and the foot soldiers, the guards, etc., that were causing suffering and being cruel and doing all this. And yet he could see their humanity, and was out of that being able to transform his own heart and be able to see the humanity in others, even in those who were causing real harm, that he was able, I think, to come to the place to be able to negotiate the agreements that led to the ending of apartheid and a relatively peaceful transition to a multiracial democracy. I don't want to over-determine that and say that was the only thing. There were a lot of other things going on. But his role in that was a very, very profound one. And his inner work, I think, transformation was a very, very important part of that larger social transformation, which, it's 30 years ago this year, 1994, the elections leading to a multiracial democracy. And one other, I've shared, I think, on maybe a time or two about Mahagosananda, the Cambodian monk and teacher who, was forced into exile by the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia in the mid 1970s, in the time of that genocide in that country. And he went back after they were forced out and organized peace walks through bringing people together in Cambodia. And and amidst landmines, and he came to Washington to speak about landmines, a campaign to ban landmines at the end of the 1990s. And I remember he was speaking on the Capitol, steps of the U.S. Capitol, and he made a very, very short statement, but he said, before we can I mean, in order to uproot the landmines from the earth, we must uproot the landmines from our own hearts. And that kind of stuck with me, 25 years later, that if we don't transform the landmines in our own hearts, we're going to continue, putting them in the ground, and we're going to continue causing harm. That's another way of saying what Blaise Pascal said, that the inner work of transformation is really fundamental, is really essential. Doing the work that I think we're committed to do, to kind of open up and see where we're hooked, see where we're tangled, and how we might let go. So this freedom of the heart, this inner freedom, could be expressed as the ability to meet life's joys and sorrows with a wise and caring heart. To meet whatever the conditions of life are, with a compassionate heart, with wisdom, knowing what is a wise response, what is a helpful or appropriate response to whatever the conditions are, to whatever the situation is. So it's a freedom that's not limited. It's not limited by external conditions, by sickness, by aging, that we can, by loss, that we can experience freedom even in the midst of all of this, of all of life's conditions. And so this is the freedom, the inner freedom, the freedom of the heart that the Buddha was really searching for when he left the palace. I think everybody probably knows the story, at least the outlines of the story, of feeling that even though he had all the luxuries and comforts, he was still subject to sickness and aging and death, and wanted to know if is it possible? Is freedom possible in the midst of all of this? And then he left his luxury and comfort, his life in the palace, went into the homeless life, and then, practiced and studied, practiced, and then his question was: is there an end to suffering? Is there an end to suffering? Do we believe there is an end to suffering? Is there an end to suffering? Can we alleviate suffering? Can we end suffering completely in our lives? And maybe not so much a question for belief as a question for exploration, investigation in our own lives. As the Buddha says, see for yourself. Test it. See for yourself. What happens when you practice? What happens when you notice when you're clinging and you invite a sense of letting be, letting it come and go? Is there more space? Is there more a sense of freedom? Is there an opening? Is it possible to let go? I think a place, a place we can really begin to look at the question of freedom in our own lives is to look at our own lives, perhaps look around us as well at the suffering in the world. And I think one of the things we may be able to see, is that the ways in which we're not free, when we don't experience freedom, ways in which we don't experience spiritual freedom, inner freedom, freedom of the heart. So, for example, when we're wanting something that we don't have, like we say we're feeling we don't have enough. Oh, I wish I didn't. I wish I was in a relationship, or I wish I had a job that I really liked. I wish I had a bigger house, or I wish I had. All of these things. Sometimes it can be. I wish I need to have. I need to have that drug that will make me feel okay. And that sense of when we're in that place of kind of fixation on something that we want that we don't have, we experience it as suffering. And it's, certainly for me, it comes across as not feeling very free. I'm pulled along by this thing that I want. My mind is fixated. Sometimes the body as well, very much like, got to have this, moving towards. We could see it as a gap between where I am and where I want to be. And in that gap, there's suffering. We can experience it as clinging, like, I've got to have it. And that clinging shuts us down, clinging, craving, the Buddha talked about it as. And when we experience that, we're really not free. We're constrained by our own clinging, just as we would be constrained by being in a prison cell. It's a different kind of lack of freedom. The prison cell, we can't leave. And obviously we would have the mental unhappiness that goes with that as well. I want to be out of here. I don't want to be here. But this inner constraint, inner suffering, inner clinging is a similar kind of imprisonment in our own suffering. We could see this similarly when we're feeling fearful or anxious or stressed. Again, the mind is contracted, like, this might happen, and we have scenarios and fear is present because we don't want something bad to happen. We think, I've got to get this done because, implicitly or explicitly, something bad is going to happen. If I don't get all this work done, I'm going to lose my job. Whatever it might be, that kind of that stress, that worry, that anxiety. Again, we're being driven by that mind state of fear, of clinging. That we need to do something or change something to be okay. So, again, we can look at, we're not in the driver's seat. We're being swept along by these, by our unconsciousness, by our clinging, by our aversion. We could see it, when we're caught up in anger or in complaining or judging. It's the same thing, could be around a political figure or somebody who in your own life who's like, they're doing something that we really don't like them doing, and we're annoyed by it, or we're angry, or we're judgmental. Again, and when we're caught up in that, we're not in a place of freedom. Freedom implies that we can choose a more healthy, a more helpful response. But when we're driven along by our fears, or by our worries, or by our cravings, or by our aversion, our dislikes, then we're not free. We're being pulled, we're being swept along. I think another quote from Viktor Frankl speaks about between the stimulus and the response is a space. When we're caught up in that way, we're not seeing that space between the stimulus and response. We're going straight to the response. I'm feeling this, and I need to do something, and need to express my anger with this person or this situation. I need to do something about it. So when we're swept up in that, when we're caught up in that, we're not free. One thing we say about all of these situations is if we can see where we're not free and how we're not free, how we're entangled, how we're caught up in clinging, how we're caught up in what the Tibetans use the term Shenpa, Shenpa, like being hooked on something. Whenever we're hooked on anything, we're really not free. We're like a fish on a hook. We can't just swim away. We're we're hooked, we're tangled. In all these situations, there's suffering, that comes from not being in a place of being able to choose a more helpful alternative, or being very, very constrained in being able to make more helpful choices. When we're caught up in these mind states, we're not present for our experience. We're not here. There's a gap between where we are and where we want to be. I need to have that thing that I don't have. There's me here. There's the thing or the whatever it is that I'm wanting that's there. There's a sense of present and future. We're caught up in a future that will be better than where things are right now. When we're disliking something, we're here, but we want to be somewhere else. We want to feel more ease. So that contraction and that gap, constrain our freedom. Similarly, when we're stressed out or worried or fearful, we want to be somewhere else, experiencing something else, but this is where we are. So, what is the way out? What is the way towards greater freedom in our lives when we're caught up in any of those situations or many other similar situations? How do we get out of those tangles? How do we get off the hook? I mean, the answer, hopefully, comes across clearly because it gets repeated over and over again, is to come back to your experience here and now. Turn towards your experience. Was it James Baldwin said, not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. The fact that we actually are willing to turn towards something doesn't mean that, it changes necessarily for the better. But unless we do that, nothing can change. So the essential step on the path to greater freedom is that turning towards our experience, turning towards what am I experiencing now, and inviting ourselves to be present with what's here, to allow what's here to be here. If there's anger, allow yourself to experience it, to feel it, to let the feelings come and go. Not to act it out in unconscious ways, because that's just acting out the unconsciousness, that acting out the clinging, but to really be there with the experience. And when we stay with the experience, the direct experience, the changing flow of experience, we can come to see that it actually is impermanent, it's changing, it's not solid, it's actually not me or mine. It only becomes kind of me or mine when I get into a fight with it. But if I can just be with it and let it come and go. In Buddhism is sometimes talked about as the emptiness. See that it doesn't have a real existence. It's just phenomena that if we don't get entangled with it, it can come and go. It doesn't have to be problematical. It's not always simple. Obviously, I'm saying it can make it sound more simple. Sometimes we obviously have to do real work to engage with our suffering for the ways in which we're not free. It does call for honesty and it calls for courage, because where we're going to is the places that scare us. That's a name of one of Pema Chodron's books, Tibetan Buddhist teacher. Or, there's places, we have to go to the places that scare us. Otherwise, we just keep acting out the fear. We keep trying to push it away, running away from the dragon, running away from the monster. And in running away from the monster, we reify the monster. The monster becomes more of a monster, the dragon, more dragonish. And so we're turning towards our experience, going to the places that scare us, being willing to. And sometimes you have to do it very gradually and very tenderly and very gently, particularly if there's trauma and if it's really, really hard. But we can do that. Maybe we go in and then we come back out and go in again. But there are skillful practices to do it, but we do need to go to those places. We need to, as Rilke says in one of his letters to a young poet, we have to trust in the difficult. Trust in the difficult. Be willing to actually go towards what's difficult. Because what we normally do is go, oh, this is difficult. I don't want this. So we move away from it. But the difficult is teaching us something. If we're triggered by something, there's something we need to see, something we need to learn, something we need to engage with in order to free ourselves, to untangle ourselves. We typically think, this person is doing something to me. They're annoying me. Well, if they're annoying me, there's something in me that also needs to be paying attention to. They may be acting unskillfully, absolutely, that, we do that. But there's also something, if I'm triggered, then there's something that I need to work on in myself. So trusting in the difficult. Rilke has the wonderful, in this letter to the young poet, he says, he speaks about he speaks about the myths in all races of about dragons that at the last moment are transformed into princesses. Those are those ancient stories, and he says perhaps all the dragons in our lives are princesses who are only waiting to see us act just once with beauty and courage. Perhaps everything that frightens us is, in its deepest essence, something helpless that wants our love. So the dragons that turn into, like in some of the dreams, if we have the courage to turn around and face, the monster or the dragon it actually, can dissolve, because it's a mind creation. It's something that we're not seeing, that we're creating from our unconsciousness, not just from our unconscious, but from our not being fully aware, not being fully present for our experience. So turning the dragons turning into princesses when we turn towards our experience. So seeing the ways that we're not free, where we're entangled, where we're hooked, and then turning towards our experience. And this is what the Buddha, saw so clearly under the tree of awakening, woke up to see that there is an end to suffering, that when we turn towards our experience, we can see how we're hooked. We can see how we create suffering through our clinging. And we can, in seeing, we can let go. We can see, oh, this is changing. This isn't solid. The willingness to sit and be with and stay with the difficulties allows us to see the deeper truths about all of life, that everything is impermanent, everything is changing, and nothing, there's nothing that it is a solid self in all of us, in all of this. We think about, oh, this is my anger or my fear, and we solidify it. But if we're able to just be with it, it's actually a much more impersonal emotion. It's a much more impersonal energy. It takes on this notion or this connotation of I, this solid I, by our not seeing. It's the not seeing that creates this sense of solidity. But if we can just be with and stay with and acknowledge, if we can turn towards the difficulties, turn towards the painful situation, then we can see that it's all comes and goes, that nothing can be clung to as I or mine, that clinging only perpetuates the illusions that keep us locked in suffering, and that if we can stay, be with our experience. The Buddha spoke of this as mindfulness as a direct path to liberation, direct path to freedom of the heart. By being willing to be with our experience, we gain insight into, not just into our own experience, but into life more broadly. And in that seeing, there's a letting go, and there's it's a falling into awakening, into the truth really of who we are, who we truly are. But what gets obscured by our unconscious clinging, by our thinking that we'll find happiness if I just change this, if I get away from this, if I get this. If we can let go of that, then the deepest freedom is possible in this life. And the Buddha, seeing this, seeing that it wasn't just something that he could see uniquely. Obviously, there was something very powerful and unique about his experience that is still ringing down through 25 centuries. There's a depth of understanding. But what he saw was that each one of us has this capacity to wake up, to let go of clinging, and to live freely. Whether we experience the depth of freedom of full awakening, or just the freedom of letting go and finding some peace in our own lives. I often come back to Ajahn Chah, the Thai teachers. What he said of, let go a little and you'll experience a little peace, a little freedom. Let go a lot and you'll experience a lot of peace, a lot of freedom. Let go completely and you'll experience complete peace, complete freedom. Your struggle with the world will be at an end. That we may not experience the fullest freedom possible in this life. We may do. This is a possibility that each one of us has. But we can awaken. But even just in our everyday lives, can we let go a little? And then that gives us the courage and the confidence perhaps to let go a lot in areas where we might think, I'm never going to be able to deal with that. I could never forgive that person. I could never stop disliking this situation. I could never stop wanting this. But these are all just mind creations. We can, if we keep on looking, we keep on turning our awareness towards our experience. A nice quote from Eckhart Tolle, who says, anything unconscious dissolves when you shine the light of consciousness on it. Anything unconscious dissolves when you shine the light of consciousness. Because the unconsciousness stays and grows through living in the darkness. We're not looking at it. We're kind of putting it away over here. Dragon, we don't want to look at it. Keep it safely in that room over there. But that we live a life that's less than full, because that's always there in some part of our consciousness, and we're not looking at it. So the freedom comes from turning towards our experience. A mantra has come up for me in my own practice in the last period, and it's allow everything, resist nothing. Allow everything, resist nothing. Just when things come up, can I allow this? Can I not resist anything? So just to come towards closure on this, what I want to just kind of invite a reflection on for us here is, the Buddha taught that freedom is possible in this very life, and others have taught this, the same capacity, maybe other approaches to freedom, to awakening. But I think, in a way, the most important question is, what does freedom mean to you in your own life? Is freedom a goal of your practice, of your spiritual path? And something that can be very helpful to reflect on is, have you experienced greater freedom in your life through your practice, through the understanding and the experiences that you've gained through your practice on the spiritual path? Some of the changes we might see through practice of the Dharma, maybe some of these speak to you. We might experience more joy in our life. James Baraz spoke, the other day to, CML Center about his, course he's been doing for 20 years of awakening joy, that we can awaken joy just as we can awaken the smile, that experience more joy in our practice, more joy in our life, more gratitude, more kindness, perhaps more peace, more calm. Maybe we've been able to let go of difficult states, more ability to do that when they arise. Maybe less stress, less anger, less fear, less judgment, less blame, more forgiveness. Maybe changes in the way you relate to your family, to your partner, a loved one, or to your colleagues. Do you see any of these changes in your own life, in your own practice? I've certainly have in my years of practice. Sometimes they're things that happen suddenly. We let go of things. Sometimes they're things that, just like water kind of dropping on a stone, wears things away, and we change. There's that poem by Lynn Unger, just kind of waking up and seeing that somehow things have changed through the practice, through the work we've done. One of the most valuable things is when other people see that we've changed, that we've become more peaceful or more calm or less angry or whatever. This can be very reinforcing for our practice. Oh, I've noticed that something changed. Not that we kind of wanting to change the way people see us, but it can be kind of helpful to see that. So just finishing with that reflection for us, this path of awakening, of waking up, of finding freedom. What have you noticed in your own life? And does it inspire you to continue to deepen your practice? And what might be some practices to help you? I mean, these are all, I think, useful reflections. And realizing that I've gone on a little bit here today, maybe we'll finish there, and Emily will lead us in some movement, and we'll come back together, just maybe some time for closure. And anyone who'd like to can stay around, and we'll talk some more after 12. So thank you, Emily. Sorry, a little late starting the movement today.
Thank you so much, Hugh. Let me invite you to stand up if you'd like to. And if not, just stay in your chair and move along as you like. Just expanding into the space, noticing, finding where your gaze is. From one side to the other, keeping your gaze at horizon height. And then open up wide, expanding, lengthening up. Exhale, soften your arms, soften your elbows. And now float the hands down, leaving the elbows up. Inhale, rise. Exhale, floating them down. Inhale, rising up. Extend your arms out. Flip that left palm up. Take a look. And on an inhale, switch to flip up the right palm. And back to the left, to the right, to the left. And last time to the right. Float your arms down, roll your shoulders together. And roll them the other way. And just to continue, place both of your arms straight out, your right wrist on top of the left, clasp your hands. We're going to draw the symbol of infinity. So just draw the figure 8 sideways and enjoy the way the muscles move your rib cage, how you can feel a gentle swaying, and come to center, move the other way. And come to center. Switch wrists, placing the left on top, clasp your hands and draw that figure 8, finding a way to engage your attention with your body. And now, draw it the other way. Yes. Perhaps there's confusion, perhaps not. And drop your arms down. Take a moment. And then draw your arms up. Clasp your left wrist in your right hand. Extend over to the right. Expanding your left rib cage here. Exhale, soften here. Inhale up, switch. Grasping your right wrist, extending over to the left. And then inhale as you lengthen to the left. Exhale, softening. And then inhale up, float your arms down. Roll your shoulders independently. And roll them the other way. And come to center. Place your hands behind your waist. Find your feet and take a moment noticing how your vertebrae stack to making that spine that supports you. Drop your chin to your chest. And then on an inhale, lifting your head, lifting your chest. Exhale, drop your wrists behind or lower than your buttocks. Back to the waist. And drop your chin to your chest. Inhale, lifting up. Exhale, floating your arms or extending your arms. And release. Float your arms up. Do your dance. Noticing the freedom of your arms. Engaged. Good. Shake it out. And then last, find a stance. Engaged, lifting your arms up. Place the palms of your hands together. Draw them down to your heart. And then turn your hands out to the group, wishing everyone here well. Drop your hands to appreciate the earth. And then on an inhale, lift your arms up. So whoosh. Good. Dropping them down to your heart. Out to the group with kindness. down to the earth. And whoosh. And then softly drawing your hands to your heart and take a bow. Thank you for your practice.
Lovely. Thank you, Emily. Wonderful, as always.